So I'm gonna try to look at my notes real fast. So I will probably start with something that actually made the Wall Street Journal. There's actually a couple of things that made the Wall Street Journal over this past week that have been big in either blockchain or crypto. I just kind of bundled both of them together, saying that the interest pool here should be between both of them. But if there's anything you guys would like me to go through and hit on more, or try to focus on a little later, feel free to let me know. Always welcome to for feedback. So one of the biggest things that I saw was the Bitmain. It's a mining company based out of Hong Kong, and they're actually pursuing to go public. So I don't know what everybody's familiarity is with going public. Specifically, it's called an IPO. It's a initial public offering. My bad. But what that does is that goes through and offers, actually it goes through and creates stock. It's an issuance of stock to where you can go through and buy Bitmain stock off of an exchange, most likely the Hong Kong exchange. So I think that would be a revolutionary advancement in this technology. Say first of its kind. I mean, I couldn't imagine a year ago any kind of Bitcoin company going public and having that, because along with going public, you have the scrutiny of regulators, you've got forms, SEC documents that you have to go through and apply for. There's a whole number of things that you have in addition to just operations when you go through and you go public. So that'll be very interesting to see how Hong Kong goes through and maneuvers around that IPO, and to see what comes out of it, and then hopefully what will end up transferring into the US, hopefully going through and improving the environment here, so that we can go through and hopefully see a few IPOs of our own. So that would be awesome. So going on from that, still kind of in that same banking financial services gleam, would be so there is a interbank information network that now 75 banks have actually joined to go through and begin implementing blockchain payments. So I saw that was something that I had not really noticed before this. I saw the article in the Wall Street Journal, took a pretty high interest in it, mainly because my background is in finance. But I think that'll, again, open up the door to more awareness, more accessibility to blockchain, and hopefully building the space. Because I think that's one of the biggest things that we can try to go through and do, especially after the volatility that the market has shown. We can still prove that the technology underlying these currencies is still valuable and still applicable beyond just Bitcoin, beyond Ethereum, that it's applicable more to the entire environment of what we are interacting with. So I think that's phenomenal. But it will be interesting to see how the banks go through and maneuver around this, just because are they going to take more of a centralized view? Are they going to take more of a decentralized view in terms of how they would go through and regulate how they use blockchain? Will it be more of a public-based ledger? Will it be more of a private ledger? I think only time will tell, and we'll see how some of these banks will start to go through and implement this kind of technology. So going on from that, so another interesting thing that goes through and I think helps the environment, is the blockchain environment as well, is that Google's actually reversed their crypto ad ban. I think that was something that was very negatively influencing the entire market. I mean, just because it was big enough to go through, make headlines. And then in addition to that, I think it really gave a lot of negative perspectives to go through and go on to the entire market. So I think them going through and reversing that idea really shows that their perspective is starting to change. There is progress that's being made. And I think we're starting to come out of the tunnel into something that's a little bit more accepting, a little bit more welcoming. So I think that's a trend in the positive as well. So, and then let's see, one last thing will be, so then the other big piece of news was your judges, mainly dealing in securities law, have actually started to be a little bit more accepting. Well, a little bit more accepting of trying to discover crypto fraud. So they are actually starting to go through and implement task force to try to go through and combat fraud. That being probably one of the biggest aspects of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology that is a little bit more vulnerable just because people aren't aware of the different mechanisms of what you can use it for. And again, a lot of that perception kind of builds into how these technologies are viewed. And as people come out of the perception that, hey, this technology is only used for illegal activity, fraud, going through and deceiving people, deception, that kind of thing. I think as we start moving away from that, getting a little bit more regulation and getting more people to pull out the fraud will be another huge step in the market as well. So that's this week's news. Let me know if you guys have any feedback, if there's anything more you want to talk about. But awesome.
All right, you guys, I'm gonna try that the mic one more time. I know that was a bit loud, but I just prefer to talk a bit lower since you're all so far away, which is okay. So I'm gonna go to properties and then just decrease.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. You guys actually listening to this? Just my voice. Do you guys hear me back there?
Yeah, we can hear you fine back here.
Nice, sweet. Turn us off. You know what? Present on here, it should work, right?
Yeah, I think you want to move it to the other screen.
And this thing works too?
It should, but we will.
I
don't know.
No, just kidding. What goes forward?
It should be the one on the right. Is it on?
You might have to download it.
The driver.
And then have your presentation.
Oh, to.
That makes sense.
You can't go from.
Should I try that real quick? Let's try it out. Hang in there, guys. We're all in here as a team.
As far as news, something I was going to add was, I know Ripple was having their big conference this week. And like Bill Clinton was the keynote speaker.
That's
So that was something they had advertised a while back. And I had never like really heard about it since they had, initially advertised it, and it actually happened. Or it's happening this week, so he's actually going to be making that speech probably this weekend.
Do you know if you're live streaming it? I'm actually kind of curious to see what he even said.
Yeah.
What is he going to talk about? Like,
They announced a bunch of other partnerships at that same, I think it was a Swell convention or Swell conference, whatever they called it. But they announced a bunch of banks that are hopping on their platform, so that's a really cool bit of news. What else? Volkswagen is deploying something related to the IOTA blockchain about putting cars on blockchain. I believe it's with VIN numbers, so vehicle identification numbers. It's not necessarily autonomous cars talking to each other quite yet. That was one pretty cool thing. If I think of any other news, you guys share it again.
yeah, no, and if anybody else has anything to add for news or anything cool that they've seen, feel free to jump in and add that in as well, because I mean, everything's worth hearing about at some point, one way or another. And I mean, I only limit myself to a couple different news sources. So if anybody else has anything to add, feel free. I mean, jump right in, not a problem.
Sweet. All right, you guys. Hello. For those who don't know me, my name is Kenton Prescott. I'm a fifth-year aerospace engineering student with a deep interest in software and everything crypto. So today, and I'm sorry to those who've heard me rant on again about this again and again and again. I am sorry, because this is probably like the fifth time, but it's gonna be a good time. If you all have any questions whatsoever that you need answering at that moment, please feel free to stop me. So I'm going to talk about stablecoins and MakerDAO. This is our agenda. 7 points. We're going to start off with what's sound money, problems with instability, MakerDAO, DAI dynamics, DAI is their stablecoin, other types, metrics, and finally the roadmap. So before I begin though, I'd like to kind of take this opportunity to talk more about how we present ourselves as the blockchain community outwards. So what I have here is two umbrellas. Left side is moral arguments, and the right side is objective arguments. And currently, there's a trend where everyone likes to, when they're trying to persuade someone to accept or at least think about using blockchain tech, they lean more towards the moral side. And although that's a strong vision and it's exciting, it can only go so. In the real world, there are profit-seeking organizations that are willing to adopt new tech as long as they're able to make more profits, right? So if we can actually transition every moral argument to be more objective, I think that over the long run, we will achieve more as blockchain enthusiasts, entrepreneurs, devs, etc. So what I did here was I just basically said, look, if you really like being trustless, you can, there's a very clear link to faster settlement times. If you really like, to say, censorship resistant, it's really easy to then say, oh, that leads to cost savings. So let's try to like lean more towards this side because it's objective and it's like, it's not equivalent to like math, but it's like saying 1 + 1 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, rather than 1 + 3 is chicken, you know? So, all right, so this is a dumb joke, I'm sorry. I like to start off this talk with defining what sound money is. Sound money could be either through a transactional medium, it could be a good store of value. And so in 350 BC, Aristotle defined about 4 criteria for what is good money. He was specifically applying it to gold and precious metals, etc. So he said that good money or sound money is divisible, durable, transferable, intrinsically valuable. Most of us actually last one into scarcity and fungibility. So let's now ask ourselves, right? Like, are these assets sound, right? Is Bitcoin durable? Yes, it is. Transferable, of course. Fungible, yes. Scarce, yes. Divisible, yes. But is it stable though? It depends what you're aiming it towards, right? And I think that desired stability is something that should be thought of more. What do I mean by this? Well, on the bottom you have time. On the right side you have Y. Well, the Y-axis, obviously, is USD for Bitcoin, or the price of 1 Bitcoin in USD. This thing is changing, you guys. That's changing with like, whoa. So obviously, as you all know, there's a massive amount of speculation, and that causes a massive amount of volatility. So is this stable relative to US dollars? Honestly not. Come on, you guys. Honestly not. Stay awake, right? So let me describe some of these issues with instability. I have 2 examples. One is for a business owner that wishes to accept crypto as a form of payment. And then the other one is between business A and business B when they enter into some type of financial contract. So let's say that the business owner, the first one, has some really happy customers. He gets paid in crypto. Let's just say Bitcoin, okay? Business A is willing to invest in business B. Business B is happy and now has cash, and business A is happy because they'll get that return on investment, right? Plus some interest. And ultimately, everyone's happy. They all have Bitcoin, crap ton of it, etc. The thing is, though, everyone always relates their amount of wealth back to the units of USD, right? It's always in terms of how much dollars you have, how much you are worth, right? And so if the market price of that crypto that you just accepted, that's going down with time and you didn't back out of that, then you now have less. You now have less value. Obviously, I'm like breaking this down a lot just so then we fundamentally understand everything. And no one's happy, right? No one's happy. So what's one solution to this? Stable coins. That's like the most awesome photo I found. It's a balancing coin. This is the English franc, I think, or something. But yeah, so now that you all kind of have an understanding of the Tower of Coins, okay, of like what stability brings, I'd like to do a transition into one of the oldest stablecoin projects in the entire space, and that's called MakerDAO. MakerDAO is a global organization with employees in Europe, Asia, and both North and South America. I'm currently working for them as a software engineering intern. I've been there for about 4 months, and I'm excited to present to you what they all have to offer. They actually started before Ethereum was a thing, right? And so they've been around with the one goal of creating the ultimate stable coin. And so they have some interesting tricks up their sleeve. So meet Maker. Maker's mission is to unlock the power of the blockchain to create economic empowerment. And we think that the first phase of that is to establish a credible, scalable, stable coin called DAI. Okay, that thing right there is a DAI. All right, I'll tell you a bit more about that. DAI is MakerDAO's flagship product. It's an asset-backed hard currency. It's soft pegged to the USD, which means that it's not a hard peg where it's one-to-one always, which can be broken for sure. But it's soft peg, so it kind of like varies within a bound around the 1-to-1 exchange rate. So it may sometimes be 0.98 cents per dollar. It may sometimes be 1.01 cents, etc. Excuse me. This is for the basic user, right? The end consumer. Ideally, you don't want them to realize or need to worry at all about how DAI works, right? They just need to know that it's $1 on Ethereum. In the best case, the end consumer would not even know that they're dealing with crypto whatsoever. Now, this last point here, this is a permissionless credit factory. Okay, so the way that the supply is varied of DAI, it's done through a permissionless credit factory that resides on Ethereum's smart contracts. So I'm going to go a bit deeper into this right now. The mechanics start at this point right here. It's called a CDP. Before I go into this, are there any questions? Because I realize I just spoke for like 10 minutes. Yes.
So I was going to ask, what is the advantage of having a soft peg versus a hard peg? Like, I feel like that would just make the accounting more and more difficult if it's fluctuating between the 98 cents and the 102.
Sure. Excellent question. To give you a short answer now, and then I expand upon that after. But we are operating as a decentralized stablecoin. Okay, so a lot of like that pegging, a lot of the pressure upwards and downwards is actually more organic than anything, right? If we had it hard pegged, we have to fully ensure that there are arbitrageurs on both sides that's willing to buy and sell whenever it's slightly outside of a 1-to-1 exchange rate. And ultimately that incurs a higher counterparty risk.
Okay.
You mentioned on the last slide a hard currency, and I was just wondering what you meant by that.
Hard means stable.
Okay, so
Yeah,
not
so
hard,
it's-
not hard like physical, like they're, like, for example, if there was Tether actually in a bank anywhere, but hard, like stable pegs or something.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's, the reason why I say hard is because the traditional financial infrastructure doesn't ever talk about stable currency. They only say hard currency relative to the US dollar or pegged currency, right? So this is kind of like a way to kind of bridge that gap between financial infrastructure that's traditional to new. Any other questions? If I'm going too fast too, excuse me, please ask me to slow down.
Wait, I just want to say, when you said Bitcoin and all this stuff was fungible, I don't think they would be considered fungible because of the fact that they can be like blacklisted from exchanges if they if they were hacked, like the Ethereum ones.
Yeah, no, you're definitely correct. I think that it was more fungible.
It was definitely fungible, more so at like the
years
big,
ago,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But I just say that it still is because it's not clearly defined
No,
yet that
yeah.
it is not fungible, right? So it's still gray.
Yeah.
And it just goes with the flow.
No, completely agree.
And I'm like, yes, no, yes. So, all right, cool. All right, so the core of how DAI works is that, the core of how DAI works is through this revolutionary thing that we call the CDTP. Okay, it's similar to it's not quite, but similar to a loan. So the way that this supply of DAI works is that once any entity puts in some form of collateral into the smart contracts, they are then able to borrow DAI of a lesser amount of what they put in and use it for their daily use, right? It's just like saying, oh, I'll throw in my house or something, and I want to take out a loan in USD and use that to like pay for things, etc. If you ever want that collateral back, though, you have to repay that DAI plus a small fee, and then you could free it after. You all are probably thinking, why are there more green boxes than black? And the reason is because the smart contracts that regulate this supply of DAI, it additionally enforces that the amount of value that you put in is always more than the amount of value in DAI that you create. I forgot to mention too that when you repay that DAI, when you draw DAI, new DAI is created, right? And when you repay DAI, that DAI is burned, right? Again, it's analogous to a mortgage. If you're trying to buy a house that you don't have as much funds to buy it outright, you could take out a mortgage with a bank, right? And you give them basically the rights to accept the ownership of your house if you're unable to repay that debt. It's essentially saying, I'm going to front my house as a collateral point, and if I cannot repay that, if I default on my loan, then you can have my house. So as you repay that debt plus interest, you're able to retrieve the ownership of that house. So some of you may think, though, that what happens if the USD value of that collateral goes down? And if it goes down below a certain point from what the system has enforced. And if the CDP owner is not fast enough to put in more collateral to increase that green level, then the system will automatically liquidate part of that loan, sell it off at an auction to anyone that wishes to participate at some discount rate. Okay. Once it retrieves DAI, it then burns that DAI to cover its bad debt, and any excess collateral that is sold off can be okay. Excuse me. So again, it sells it off, plus a penalty fee, takes that away, and the owner can get some more. So yeah.
Just to clarify, who owns the CDP? Does Maker
Could be anyone.
own the CDP?
No. So this is, I am saying the CDP owner is the person who created it in the first place. So anyone can create this this cup, right? And the more that you fill the gems in, the more that's willing to give you DAI, if that makes sense.
So if I give my house, I'm the owner of the CDP?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Right. Again, it's not directly like a loan, because there's no, as long as the value stays above a certain point of your collateral, you don't have to pay back your DAI by a certain point. As long as Ethereum is alive and continues to progress, yeah, you can always have that loan, that cup open. Yes.
So you say your collateral can't fall under a certain value?
Yeah.
What is that collateral measured in?
USD.
Okay.
Right? And again, USD is assumed to be equivalent to DAI.
And so who chooses those margins?
I'll get to that soon. Okay, so now it goes to a mortgage, liquidations, etc.
Real quick.
Shoot.
So how would you be able to determine the real, the dollar value of the collateral? Because I mean that for if you were going to go through and use a house, you would have to go through and get it appraised, get it essentially, to go through and get it appraised.
Sure.
Who would go through and do that? Would you have to go through and privately do that on your own to then use it as collateral for DAI? Or what do you typically see as collateral?
So I'll get to that in a second, actually. But currently, DAI is operating as a single crypto collateralized coin, right? And it's only Ethereum right now. But we hope to expand that to more, which I'll hit.
Gotcha.
All right. So of course, not all stable coins are equivalent. It's kind of this is a nice. I did not make, it was someone else. And it kind of shows there are three main types, and any other type that's not these three right here are just slight variations of it. Okay, so we on the top right, we are. I wonder if you can you all see this? Oh, nice. We are more collateralized. We are decentralized, but we're not as capital efficient since you have to pay more. You have to put in more than what you can actually pull out. Whereas Tether is not as decentralized. There's only one entity that accepts the Tether coin and gives you back USD. I'm not even sure if they will even do that itself, right? There's a lot of fraud, not fraud, but there's a lot of cloud around that because they haven't seemed to publicly done what they said that they would do. At the bottom is something a bit more experimental, actually. This is called Basecoin. And they have algorithms that actually control the supply of that coin, which in theory should work, but it has not been proven in practice. Now, the reason why crypto collateralized is preferred is because one, it's decentralized, and two, it's collateralized by a real asset, right? Those are two key points to having something fundamentally stable, something that has been proven again and again and again. Okay. Now, to answer your question earlier, if it was you or someone else actually, Maker also has a different coin. It's called the Maker coin. Okay, this is a governance token, and some may think if DAI is exclusively controlled on Ethereum through smart contracts, who controls those smart contracts? Well, it's the MKR holders. Right? So through a governance process, the MKR holders can make decisions on how DAI runs. This is, of course, for the more advanced user, one that understands risk, and it's usually one that has a substantial amount of invested interest in DAI itself. Right? So this could be a bank that has a lot of its assets in DAI, and so it wishes to also govern it. So it participates as an MKR stakeholder. Now, if any of you missed all of that, that's okay. I have the ultimate flow chart here. All right, and we're going to go through it. So on the left side, we have a blockchain. This is called the Ethereum blockchain, and on it is the CDP engines. This is a smart contract. Then we have, or at this point, the ETH in USD versus time graph is like this. It looks like it's going up. All right, so we have a guy named Bob that has some Ethereum, and he's like, okay, let me take a bet that Ethereum is not going to drastically drop, because I'm about to throw in all of my Ethereum that I own all at once, because I want to take advantage of the value of my Ethereum without selling it, right? So he puts it in, he creates a CDP of his own. This is his, he's the owner. He can take out DAI, right? In the meanwhile, these MKR holders go through a governance process, and they, again, control the parameters of the DAI system. Now, Bob has a great time. He goes out with friends, he pays bills, he gets stuff done, right? And this Ethereum blockchain is just going along, chugging along, right? And it's still there. The smart contract is still there. He is confident that his Ethereum is still there. But is he confident that he can retrieve it though? He is, because that graph didn't dive down drastically. It went up in a general trend. Okay, so when that happens, he can be confident that the value of his Ethereum didn't drop below that liquidation point. Okay, and he was just paid by his employer. Right, he has the exact same DAI that he drew plus some interest, pays it back because he wants his Ethereum back for whatever reason. It can make him feel good, etc. All right, are there any questions about this flowchart? Let's go. All right, let's go.
So if I'm looking at the flowchart correctly, he put in the same amount of Ethereum and got back the same amount of Ethereum, even though Ethereum appreciated over time. Correct. What happens to that surplus in USD then? Because I'm assuming when he gets his Ether back, it's going to be the same value that he put in USD, or is it the same value of Ether?
It's the same value of Ether.
Gotcha. All right.
How much, you said he makes interest off of holding the DAI. How much is that?
He doesn't make it, well, actually, he does make interest, yes, which is a really new feature of DAI. But when he pays it back, though, he pays back with an interest of 2.5% per year. It was 0.5%, but that's extremely low, and we had to increase it.
Can you give me some examples of what things like the Maker coin holders would vote on in pertaining to like the ecosystem of DAI?
Yes, of course. So I won't go too deep because it gets quite a kind of complex from like an economics point of view. But there's a certain amount of there's a different collateral type, right? Or one, there will eventually be different collateral types for DAI, and depending on the volatility, the liquidity, etc., that will be different per asset type. So obviously, you don't want to put in an extremely risky asset that could dive any day. Nor do you want one that has, nor do you want one that has, nor do you want one that is like small, right? If it's small and your debt ceiling for that asset type is substantial relative to the outstanding supply of that asset, then you could basically lock up almost the entire asset in the system itself. And in the event of a crash, there would be no way to regain that value as you're selling it off in the free market. It doesn't make sense. I'll explain that.
Okay.
Right? Other things could include like debt ceiling stuff.
Yeah.
And so how much dye
Like parameters.
can be drawn out.
Okay.
Yeah. As well as the ratio at which the engine automatically liquidates your CDP. Currently, it's 150%.
That was actually my question is if the MKR holders, part of their governance was voting on liquidation models.
Exactly.
So that's not programmed into DIE
It is.
initially, it's something that can be adapted by the maker holder.
Correct. Almost every aspect of this system that affects anything about it actually can be changed based on the vote of these NKR stakeholders.
So is there any kind of like hold period that you have to have? So like when you go through and you make the original exchange into the CDP engine, is there a certain amount of time that you have to hold it for, or are you able to go through and get your ether back at any point in time?
You can do whatever you want,
Gotcha.
as long as you pay back DIE plus interest.
Correct.
Just one more question. Do you pay back the original DIE value, or do you pay back Ethereum value in DIE afterwards once the interest goes up?
The debt of DIE never changes.
Right. Ethereum, like. So my
And
point is-
Ethereum could.
Right, so my point is, you put in Ethereum, you get DIE back, right? And then you wait about a year. Ethereum goes, I don't know, 10,000 up, right? Do you pay back the original value, or do you pay back just the value, or I'm sorry, do you pay back the value when you put it in, or do you pay back the value that Ethereum currently is sitting in your account? Do you get what I'm saying?
I do. So again,
Unless I'm getting something confused.
it's almost a loan, right? Almost. A loan says you have to pay back the entirety of that loan by some X date.
Right.
This says you don't have to do any of that. As long as you have some asset in there, you can do it at every one. Wait as long as you want until you have to pay back. You drew 10 DIE.
So you gotta pay back 10 DIE.
10 DIE plus interest, which is 2.5
So
years
in
in a
the
year.
case that, again, the same example that you put in Ethereum, you get 10 DIE, but then later down the line, 2 years from there, that Ethereum that you put is not worth 50 DIE. You're not putting back 50 DIE, you only have to put back 10 DIE.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The debt is consistent with units of DIE exclusively.
And then kind of building off of what his point is, so let's say that your Ethereum that you put in is worth, 10 Ethereum today, and a year from now it's worth like 5,000 Ethereum, and you get 10 DIE at the beginning, and you spend all that DIE. Can you then liquidate some of your Ethereum and your CDP for the amount of DIE, for 10 DIE at that later point in time, and then take the rest of your capital back out? Does that make sense?
It does. So that's actually, that's a way to liquidate a CDP when you don't have as much upfront capital, right? And if you do that recursively, you're able to fully liquidate a CDP. The only issue though is you have to pay for all of the gas costs that are attributed with that.
So that's
But
a
yes,
function you guys already have
as well.
right now.
Pardon me?
That's a function you guys have right now.
No.
Okay.
No, we just assume that So every time that you pay back DAI, you're given more allowance of Ethereum to pull out. So if you pay back half of your debt, you get half of your Ether free, back, or like
You
free
get it released.
for you. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So when you originally get the DAI, actually, one question to preface this: do you actually use DAI to transact?
Yeah.
Yes.
$20.
Yeah. So if you were, well, I guess, yeah. So Bob in this scenario has his 10 DAI. He waits the 2-year period. He goes through and he pays his bills. How does he get more DAI unless he takes out another loan? Or he has to go through and put up more collateral.
He can, so if you spend, again, the CDP engine does not care how you get that DAI, right? He could have stolen it, right? But it was assumed that he got it back somehow.
Yep.
In my example, I used the situation of him being paid by his employer.
Oh, okay. So then, I guess my question is, how do you go through and make up the interest without taking out, or without putting up more collateral? So like you have to pay the 2.5% interest in DAI. If you didn't take out more, if you didn't put up more collateral, how would you get more DAI?
So that interest is a requirement for any type of lending to happen in finance.
Yep.
Right? The interest is saying, I have some X amount of cash and I can give it to you. If you can give it back to me within 1 year,
Yep.
then do it. But I require some interest.
Correct.
Right, so that's not something that the lender usually doesn't mind. They don't really have any they don't care about how you get that interest. They would assume that you use that investment to create value,
Okay.
and that value spins off into more money than what you used.
Gotcha.
All right.
Wait, quick question. Can you buy DAI with USD?
Yes.
So that would be a way of getting more collateral that you could use and pay interest with. For example, without having to put up.
Payback DAI.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
You would buy your additional DAI with USD to use as the interest on your former loan.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So what's the risk from the lender's point of view, right? Like you have all that collateral that in theory you can liquidate at any point, right? So it's obviously not risk free. There has to be some risk in here to justify 2.5%. Right? And what is that? I guess that's what I'm confused on.
You're confused about the what?
Like what risk does the lender have to justify that 2.5% number, wherever that number came from? I guess it's like a separate question, right? Like how did you arrive at 2.5%?
So
Answer.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but I would guess that the risk would be the ether. That's kind of the only variable that is uncertain, which is what the lender in this case would have, because you don't know where ether is going to go, and because you are taking that as collateral, you are praying that ether does not tank the next day, or else you have no collateral and there's nothing to liquidate. So I think
Because it takes time. I understand. So because it takes time to liquidate it, right? It's not instantaneous.
Exactly.
yeah.
Okay, I get
Exactly.
it.
Or if you hold it for 3 years or something, you don't know how, that's the other thing too. So I think the other part of uncertainty is the maturity of it. How long are you going to hold the DAI? Because even though you are making the 2.5%, if you hold it for 20 years, 2.5% accumulates. But again, if ether's at 0,
That does.
exactly.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, there's actually several additional layers of risk too that I cannot get into right now. That goes outside of the scope. It's very interesting. Right? So, what are the functions of DAI? Literally any type of financial product that uses USD, DAI can be applied to, right? So that includes lending, that includes remittances, payments, hedging, supply chain, exchange pairs, and more. These last two actually are ones that haven't really been fully realized until the use of blockchain, which I'm really excited about. So if you all have any interest, let's talk more about that. Everyone always asks me, okay, Ken, like you explain how the supply changes, but show me some like graphs, show me some metrics, right? So this may be a bit much, but I'll break down everything, right? So green is the price of DAI in USD, right? So again, I was saying that it's soft pegged, so it varies around 1. The reason why we saw more volatility in the past, this is the beginning of January or end of December, is because there was just less volume. There was less financial actors that acted as the arbitragers to keep that price within a 1 to 1 span, or 1 to 1 target. The blue line shows the supply of DAI as a function of time. So this is all organic, okay? Any spike in supply shows that there has been a large drawing event, and any drop in the supply of DAI shows that there has been a large liquidation. Okay, so right here, an exchange actually put in about $10 million worth of Ethereum, and they drew about 5 million DAI in one step, right? So that's huge. Right here too, there was a liquidation of, I think, there was this company that probably had it actually. Actually, I'm not sure, right? So like a lot of these, like anyone that has access to Ethereum can interact with DAI and take advantage of this credit factor. This orange line is the inverse Ethereum USD price. Okay, it's the inverse Ethereum USD price, which means since USD is equivalent to DAI, as Ethereum goes up, it's actually showing that the Ethereum USD price is going down. So as we see that this graph goes up, we know that Ethereum went down, and that correlates with the points of supply liquidation. Right here, right here, right here. This is the amount of total CDPs current, total, and DAI drawn. Total. I'm just gonna. Is it quick?
I was just gonna ask the reason for the volatility, because the range is seems very pure constant, but like the spike, the drop to 88 cents.
Yeah. Again. Well, actually, this, from my knowledge, this was actually a what's it called? A mistake on the recorder's point of view.
Okay.
And it didn't actually drop that low, but this was actually this graph was taken from CoinMarketCap, and they had wrong data, and we're still in like
They have that
a debate right now.
They have that a lot. I'm just letting everyone know that uses CoinMarketCap. It's frequently like bad data.
Yeah. Well, like it's also a big like mandate to cover too. You know what I mean? Like they will want to be the central hub for thousands of exchanges. It's a lot of API calls. Okay. All right, so a few more slides. What are properties of a durable stablecoin? One is being over collateralized always. The other one is having a diverse base. Again, the left side should always be more than the right side. Can't get into the last line of defense, but if the last line of defense happens and DAI is like about to break its peg, there will be a point where every DAI holder can redeem the same and a bit more value in the base. All right. So it's like if they'll give in DAI and they can retrieve some X amount of Ethereum, Litecoin, Bitcoin, etc. At some price that's more than that DAI. And this kind of like bakes in a sense of confidence in every DAI holder. They know that every DAI is backed 1 to 1.5 at least of some real asset. Okay. Next thing is having a multi-collateral base. If you have collateral in not only Ethereum, but you have it in Bitcoin and other like tokenized assets, you're able to be more resilient to black swans. Black swan is like a drastic, it's a rare financial crash, right? Financial event, or any event actually. So how does that relate to DAI now? And this is the second to last slide, so hang. So DAI is currently out now. It's a single collateral DAI. So the only asset that can be locked is Ethereum. We currently have in testing multi-collateral DAI. So this is any asset that can be tokenized on Ethereum can be locked into a cup or a CCTP, and MCCD can be drawn against that loan, right? So again, we have Ethereum, we have bonds, we have real estate, we have tokenized invoices. You can put in artwork, anything in. Here's the summary. We went through sound money. We looked at problems with instability. We introduced one of the oldest stablecoin projects in the entire space. We looked at how a CCDP is the core to how DAI works. We looked at other types and why they are inferior to DAI, obviously. And we looked at some DAI metrics as well as the roadmap. Okay. And this is the last slide. Again, one of our core tenets at MakerDAO is to be as decentralized as possible. Again, the MKR holders are the ones that control and expand DAI. So ultimately, this is a community-driven event. This is a community-driven project. So come out, get involved, find out more through our website, Reddit, chat, etc. If you come to chat, you can literally talk to any employee there, any community member that follows DAI, and we will do some great things. All right, you guys. So. All right, now questions. Anyone?
I got a question for you. Go. So let's say that I put my retirement savings in my CDP, right? So long as my retirement savings in Ethereum or pick something, so long as that basically grows at a rate higher than the interest that DAI is going to charge me, I get to basically play with free money. Because I can just liquidate my collateral to buy the DAI that I need when I need to repay the loan.
Exactly. Wait.
Does that make sense?
No, yeah. You don't need to liquidate your collateral.
Let's say I get DAI from you and I put in $100, and then a year from now I put in $100 today and I get 50 DAI back. I spend all my 50 DAI, I go blow it in Vegas. And then a year from now, what I put in that was worth $100 is now worth $200. Okay. But I only need to pay you 50 DAI.
Exactly.
So I can liquidate half of that collateral to buy essentially 50 DAI to pay back to you and then get back to the original.
Yes, you were describing a technique of unraveling a layered CCTP when you were low on capital, right? But usually you would just assume that the person would not be low on capital and they would be able to repay the full amount or increments of that debt back to then unlock their collateral. But that is a way though. Although it's just better to think about it in terms of, rather than assuming that the value of that asset goes up, in order to unlock it entirely, you don't want to make that an assumption. I mean, you want to just assume that you'll have the amount of debt that you pulled out at some X date, plus interest.
Wait, going off of that, what you're saying is you can be invested in Ethereum while still use the money.
Exactly.
Are there risk mechanisms for in the case that Ethereum drops?
Pardon me?
I put Ethereum as collateral. I get, let's say I put $100 worth of Ethereum, I get $80 worth of DAI. I spend my DAI. I wait about a year. Now Ethereum is worth $30. with the original value I put. Now, there's no incentive for me to go back and pay the die.
Exactly.
So what will happen?
So what has happened is that CCDP was probably liquidated right here. Right. It was liquidated once. So that means that let's just say the value drops below to 1.4x when compared to the loan that you pulled out, that died, right? The CDP knows that you basically owe 10% worth of die back. Okay, that 10% worth of die is bad now, it's bad debt. So rather than it waiting for you to pay back that, to ensure that the collateral ratio, right, which is collateral value over debt, to ensure it has over 1.5x, it will liquidate part of your collateral base, your asset base, plus a small penalty fee. Or it's not small, it's 13%. Okay? And it basically takes that asset and sells it to anyone off of an auction. Okay?
At the market price.
At an auction, actually.
An auction price.
Right. So what it
Normal
will,
people access this auction?
pardon me?
It's like a normal people access this auction?
Anyone can.
So they're selling Ethereum at a cheaper price? Or am I misunderstanding?
It could be, yes, yes.
Where do I go?
So with that, and then I think that answered your
Yeah,
question.
sure. But I'm just gonna, it literally sells Ethereum at a cheaper price than market price.
Is that because they took in capital because there was a penalty fee at 13%? So to offload that Ethereum, they are able to sell it lower?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So actually, so for DAI right now, for single collateral DAI, it sells off Ethereum at a discount from the market rate, at
The
a
current market
discount of 3%. But for MCD, there will be an auction,
Remind me what MCD is.
multi-collateral DAI.
Yes.
So if I give you 10 Ethereum and get DAI, can I go and be like, hey, you want to buy my DAI? Sell him my DAI?
Do whatever you want.
And then, so am I still obligated to give back that DAI to get the Ethereum back? Or-
Yes, yes. So like, if you want this Ethereum back, again, it's in a smart contract now.
So yeah, so what if I just don't want it back? And we'll just say like Ethereum tank.
So as Ethereum drops, it will continue to sell your asset at a discount to cover its bad debt. And if Ethereum is diving, then it will just sell and sell and sell and sell until there's no more
But I,
asset left.
and then I still have my DAI. And
Yes.
you're just selling.
Yep.
And then,
But again, it's a 13% penalty rate every time. So you're losing 13% on the total amount of debt that you pull down.
right, but so if I sold it already, then I'm not taking the hit. You would be taking the hit? If I sold them the DAI for in USD, does that make sense?
Yeah, so if you sold Felipe DAI in USD, you're not taking the hit at all, other than that no one else is taking the hit except for you, because your total amount of wealth has just dropped.
Because you're putting way more than your DAI is worth at the beginning. Right, so you're putting in more. It's like, they're gonna be fine. Right?
Yeah, we're cool.
Right.
So how much did you say was the fee again?
The fee, the penalty fee, or the stability fee?
I put Ethereum, I get some DAI, what's the percentage change, or the percentage difference on the Ethereum and the DAI that I put in? So I put 100 Ethereum, I'm gonna get 85 DAI?
Oh, it's 150%. Right, so 66.67 DAI that you can draw max out. But if that value of your asset goes down by even a cent, then the CDP can be liquidated by anyone. Go.
I'm sorry, I just had to digest what you just said. So anyone can liquidate?
Yeah, so.
What do you mean by that? Anyone?
I
can
let that
liquidate?
slip because, again, the Ethereum blockchain does not happen automatically. Okay, any action with the blockchain has to be triggered by something. Okay, and so when CDPs get below a certain rate, then it becomes open and available to be liquidated. Now there are bots that are scanning the blockchain, right? And as a way to keep DAI stable, they act as keepers of the DAI. And once they see a risky CDP, they liquidate it immediately. So in practice, it's liquidated almost instantly by bots that are scanning everything. But in theory, if the bots are not operational, then the CDP could have a lower CR or collateralization ratio than the liquidation ratio set by DAI.
So in terms of,
Does that answer your question?
I'll think about that. I'll have another.
See
one.
if yours. Thank you.
so in terms of who decides when the bots will liquidate, is that something that the MKR holders will do as governance?
It's bad for the system to wait. It's good if the bad, risky CDPs are liquidated ASAP.
Yeah, but who determines that? Because I mean, I don't think the bots have the ability to like determine like, hey, we're at this point, we need to liquidate.
Oh, okay. So okay, every hour there's a price feed from it, and a ton of a decentralized Oracle network that relays information from the real world into the smart contract. Okay, so once that price feed is updated, the entire system is updated, and at every hour, at every point, the system is re-evaluated. Believe it?
No, the auction, you mentioned the auction. I'm still interested in that because if I'm buying Ethereum at a 3.5%, you automate that, it's on the normal market. I'm curious though, what like, is this some sort of platform you guys have online or?
So there's a dashboard, that's our version 1. Well, let me show it to you after.
Sure.
Because it's just like, excuse me, I can show to you now, but it's not, this is our,
Every API calls available?
there could be, let me see. For auctions, there will be, but we're also in the midst of building out JS libraries that would be in the form of some application layer that rests on top of the Solidity contract.
Gotcha.
So to be more technical for a second, we're in the process of building out these libraries. Currently, we have DAI.js, right? And with that, you're able to operate and interact with the CDTP as well as with a few other things through the confines of a web app, which is awesome because now you don't need to understand smart contracts whatsoever.
So in the case that your collateral is put in Ethereum and the value of Ethereum drops, thus causing the system to liquidate your Ethereum, why would anybody buy it, depending on the rate of it dropping, why would anybody buy it at a 3.5% discount if it's dropping, like, let's say it's dropping 4%, let's say it's dropping quicker than you can sell it at the discount rate, then who's gonna buy your Ethereum?
Sure. So there's actually a point. So obviously that is the issue. Right? When auctions are in place, we wouldn't have that issue since it's a variable discount, right? And it varies based on how much the investor is willing to buy it at, right? But currently though, if Ethereum just keeps dropping at a rate that's faster than the auction off rate, then our second to last line of defense is to inflate the supply of MKR and sell it in the free market for DAI that is then used to pay back the bad debt.
So you're gonna be like Venezuela.
Well, yeah, it's really the only way, right? Like you're holding the governors accountable for their actions, because now every unit MKR price goes down. So they're incentivized to not ever.
Yeah, so the major
let that happen.
stakeholders really get screwed if you hyperinflate MKR.
Pardon me?
I was saying that the major stakeholders are the people who own MKR, they really get fucked.
Exactly.
If you hyperinflate it.
Exactly.
I see, so they don't want to have cash.
Exactly. But DAI stay stable.
Right, yeah, dice
That's
chill.
important.
Dice chill.
Sorry.
So there's a central fund that some of these fees are getting recouped by, and then that's who get the benefit of being sold maker on the free market, or is that not the case?
What do you
So-
like?
so as
Like
far
hedge
as-
funds,
as-
VC funds?
No. As far as like, when you inflate the supply of maker to sell on the free market,
Oh yeah. Okay, you ready?
right?
It's done by the smart contracts
The smart contract does it itself,
itself,
and then
which is crazy.
the money. So if it sells it, it would sell it for DAI.
Yeah.
And then that DAI would get used to pay for the collateral, to release the collateral.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It
So-
does it through a decentralized exchange. The decentralized exchange lives as a smart contract itself.
Right. Which decentralized exchange.
Exactly. Everything is decentralized.
Which,
Like, that's the whole goal, right?
no, I said which decentralized exchange.
So currently we're doing it through, I think we're linked with 0x and Oasis Dex. But we also have like several other exchanges that have MKR DAI markets.
The holders of MKR, besides speculation, what's making that value go up? Why would I buy a bunch of MKR?
Two things. One is, I didn't say this. When you pay back your DAI, the only way that the CDP engine accepts it is in units of MKR. Okay? So as people pay back their loan, I'm sorry, this is in terms of interest only. Okay? So when you pay back your loan, you pay it back in terms of DAI for the principal amount. Any interest that's paid back, it has to be paid in units of MKR.
So your principal is being paid back on DAI, nice, but the interest could be whatever.
Well, it's not, it's enforced that it's an MKR. And that MKR is then burned. So now you have the supply of MKR contracting, right? And that, according to economic theory, increases the unit price. So that's reason one. If you have a DAI supply worth $10 billion and there's interest being paid back in millions of dollars or more per year, right? Then you'll have a steady increase of MKR price growth. The second reason is that if you are like a bank, a large institution, some sort of financial entity that uses DAI to help make your trade, your processes more efficient, you have a vested interest to ensure that DAI doesn't fall apart. So you obviously want to buy MKR and participate as a stakeholder. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Do you see Polymath and other security token platforms being able to allow for MCP, the multi-collateral DAI? Because that seems like a very easy and efficient onboarding platform to get valuable assets in the form of a token, and then from there it'd be easier to get in the form of debt. It seems.
So are you saying Polymath and other like coins that live on Ethereum be used as collateral for MCD?
Well, I'm saying if there is, because Polymath allows you to create securities tokens, but these security tokens could be in the form of assets as far as real estate, art, just like you said. So if you funnel these assets through a security tokens platform first, and you can just pick and fall where those security tokens, pick and choose where they fall, and then use that as a debt. If that was where DAI was seeing, the evolution of digital assets, I don't know if you had another form of taking art, making it a digital asset, and then utilizing it as debt.
We utilize it as the asset that backs DAI, rather than you utilize it as debt, right? So to answer part of your question first, any asset that can be tokenized will be able to be used as collateral for that.
Right.
And then two, if there are assets on a different blockchain, we have to start with Ethereum because it's the largest one out there right now. But we hope to have a cross-chain implementation where we're able to connect with various other smart contract platforms.
So, right. So as far as right now, the only thing you can do is input your Ethereum that you can use as collateral. But in the instance of utilizing other things, you would have to come up with the value. In the case Kyle mentioned, like a house, you would have to get it appraised. So
yeah, exactly that. And we although that we're interested, we cannot be the facilitators of how we transmit value from the real world to the blockchain world. But we're just assuming that someone will figure it out.
And that's done through Oracle currently? Did you say that was?
Yes, yeah. So every collateral type will need their own oracle. And the oracle, or the price feed, is supplied by an Oracle network.
An Oracle network? And these oracles make decisions based on the type of collateral?
They don't make decisions really. They relay information due to some incentive.
Yeah, I think we're probably out of time, but
I can't even see up here, you guys. The light is so bright. I'm like, my eyes are dry as heck. All right.
yeah, no, I think we're out of time. So thank you guys for all coming out. Next meeting should
It'll
be
be next Wednesday.
next Wednesday.
Yeah, it'll be a general body meeting, so we'll have a few more presentations, but not as long as this one. But Ken, you did a fantastic job.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure we all learned a lot.
Certainly hope so.
Awesome. Yeah. As far as other announcements, just next week, same place, same time. Definitely get your conference tickets. And brainstorm some ideas as far as development projects, because we have some sponsors that are looking for just some ideas to put on blockchain.
Let me all know. I mean, let me know too if you want that presentation. Just for
Is the white paper on MakerDAO's website?
It is. Yeah, I'll show you all real quick. Actually, this is how it looks.
Is the dashboard on there too?
It is.
Cool.
It is. So you can interact with DIDOT at the single collateral DI right now, actually, if you wish. And so that can be accessed as long as you have a MetaMask account. That's access to DI.MakerDAO.com. Currently, it's like not loading because I think you need an injected web instance, which is essentially saying that you need MetaMask on Chrome.
Okay.
Are you familiar with what that is?
Yeah, I have it.
Oh, sweet.
Thank
Cheers.
you.